Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and we are done our United Soccer Coaches Convention mini-series. Hopefully you guys enjoyed those episodes as much as I did recording those episodes for you. I think all in all, we had 10 interviews come out from the convention, and it was a blast just to be able to attend the convention, talk with some outstanding people that are involved with the game. It was great meeting people for the very first time, people that, hit me up a couple days prior to the convention. Shout out to you, Bruce Berger. And just meeting people like Bruce, like I said, for the very first time. We're seeing people that I've seen a ton of times before, and just to see them at the convention, that was a ton of fun, and had a blast being at the convention. But like I told you guys last episode, we're going to go ahead and now start our coverage of the 2023 Philadelphia Union season. And there's a lot of topics that I wanted to get to while we were at the convention, but I didn't have enough time to record those episodes because we did so many interviews, which is fine and everything, because I would much rather interview the people that I interviewed than just have myself and Billy give our thoughts on some of the Union's off-season. But it's a good thing that we didn't talk too much about Andres Perea and the Union's depth because, as you guys know, they made one, they made two, and they made three trades within MLS to get players into this roster. And I think if you would have told Union fans at the beginning of the offseason that Ernst Tanner is going to go and trade for three MLS players, I think people would have laughed at you and said, no way he does that, because Ernst Tanner doesn't sign players in MLS. Ernst Tanner doesn't trade for players in MLS. And maybe, just maybe, because the Julian Carranza trade worked so well last season for the Union, maybe he figured, look, we're going to go ahead and make three trades this season and bring in players that we think are going to help us push for all four competitions this upcoming season. And we'll talk about the Matt Freese trade to New York City, and then we'll talk about a topic at the end that's near and dear to my heart, and that's the whole broadcast team that MLS announced. And I won't give my thoughts on the whole Apple deal because I'm going to talk about that on another podcast, and then I'm going to save that for another podcast that I record. So I'll talk about the broadcasters that MLS and Apple decided are going to call their games in English. And so right off the bat, the Union made a trade with Orlando City for Andres Perea. And I think this was a fantastic signing by the Union. Perea cost the Union in total $750,000 in GAM, with an additional $100,000 if certain incentives are met, plus a sell-on percentage will go back to Orlando City if the Union in fact trade Andres Perea. So the Union are paying $425,000 in GAM in 2023, and then $300,000 to Orlando in 2024. And one thing that I like about Andres Perea is, he signed a new deal with the Union. And so if that doesn't tell you how much the Union value him right off the bat, then I don't know how else to convince you guys. Perea, he's only 22 years old. He signed a new 3-year deal plus a team option for 2026. And the Union have 4 players, I believe, now tied up for 2026. Abasa, Daniel Gazag, Perea, and Richard Adada, I think it is. I have to pull that up. I don't have it with me right now. But look, to give Andres a new deal, essentially a 4-year contract, despite him only playing 813 minutes last season for Orlando, again, I think that speaks volumes to how much the Union value Andres as a player. Orlando had multiple players last season that could play as a 6, and so he was dispensable. And one thing that stands out to me about Andres is he's super versatile. He can play in multiple positions. Orlando, they play with 2 6s, and so he primarily played as one of the 2 6s in his time in Orlando. But that is something that Jim Curtin agreed with me about when I brought it up to him at the convention. he loved Andres' versatility, and this is what Jim Curtin had to say.
That's a great question. I think he can do both. In short, I think he could play either side of the diamond if we needed, but we've talked this year about becoming a little more tactically flexible, so we will have games where we maybe play a version of a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-5-2, however you want to call it, and he could be a guy that kind of plays as a second six in there and plays two ways in the midfield. But he's a versatile player. He has feet and talent that I could probably throw him in there at the 10 for Daniel Gazdag, and he'd do well. He's that good. So depth is an important thing, especially when we're going to be playing 55 games this year. And again, it's exciting to get a player of his quality.
Yeah, and you heard it right there. Jim Curtin said he can play in one of the 2 8 positions, whether it be on the right for Ali Bedoya when he needs a break, whether it be on the left when Leon Flock needs a break, or he can play as a 6. And the question I asked Jim was, do you think he can play the 6th position? Because you guys only play with 1 6, while Orlando City played with 2. So he's more comfortable playing in a system that plays with 2 6s compared to a system that plays with 1. And it's the same thing with Leon Flock, where Leon Flock said multiple times last season that, yeah, he can play as a 6, but he would much rather play as a 6 in a system that plays with 2 number 6s. And he did well at times this past season playing as that lone 6, but we all know Jose Martinez is the much superior number 6, where Richard Adada can also play as a 6, who I do think is that backup for Jose Martinez this season. But when you look at Andres' numbers and you start comparing him to players, he reminds me a lot of Alex Muyl of Nashville SC. Both players are tireless workers. Both players are super versatile. Both players love to tackle, breaking up plays. And we know that the Union love playing long balls. And they love having Jose Martinez and the center backs play those long diagonal balls over the top, spread the field out. And I know that's not what we typically do with our 2 outside 8s. But again, if you run with 2 6s, you for sure have that option to play him there, where he played in Orlando and was effective. And you guys heard Jim Curtin say, yeah, we could play a 3-5-2. We can play a 3-4-1-2. They can play multiple different positions. And that's the good thing about all 3 of these players that they brought in. They're super versatile. And it allows the Union to play many more formations. And Jim Curtin did say earlier last week that, yeah, our base is going to be the 4-4-2 diamond that we've been playing ever since Ernst Tanner's taken over as sporting director. But we do have options now where we've seen them in the past try to play the Christmas tree formation, the 4-3-2-1, and that's a possibility as well. Jim Curtin mentioned it last week as well, where they could play Quinn Sullivan as a 10 with Daniel Gazdag. They can play Joaquin Torres as one of the 10s with Daniel Gazdag. You heard Jim say they could potentially play Andres Perea next to Daniel Gazdag as a 10. So they have multiple players that can play as a 10. And I think having that versatility is going to go a long way for the Union this season when you look at all the competitions that they're going to be involved in. And we know that Andres has that offensive spark too. We saw it as Union fans where he scored some great goals against his team. He can shoot from distance. And that's something that this team, in my opinion, has lacked. We really haven't had a player that's comfortable shooting outside of the 18 since Anthony Fontana. Yeah, Julian Kranza last season, I think, shot quite a bit from outside that 18, and a lot of his shots were on target. But, yeah, not a lot of guys are comfortable shooting outside that 18, and now we add another player in Andres that will shoot outside. You add that along with Julian Kranza, and you have players that aren't afraid to shoot from distance. You know, who's to say that the goalie's not going to spill that ball? And if that happens, now it's an easy goal for your striker. And so I absolutely love this signing from the Union, Andres Perea from Orlando City. The next signing that the Union made was Damion Lowe from Inter Miami. Damion, he has a contract that is guaranteed for the 2023 season, plus an option for the 2024 season. He's a 29-year-old center back, has plenty of experience with playing for the Jamaican national team, plus he's played overseas. And this is what Jim Curtin had to say about signing Damion.
To see now his career, progress the way it has, and see him grow into a guy who's won trophies overseas, who's represented his national team very well, who had a great season last year for Miami and was one of the top center backs in terms of the metrics that we value in the league. It was kind of a no-brainer, and we were lucky and happy to get a deal done. So he really gives us a great weapon at center back. We talked a lot already about playing three in the back. I think you'll see us do that with three center backs, and to add him to what I already think is the best pool of center backs in the league, with Jacob, with Jack, with Brandon Craig, and now Damion. A really strong group of four.
And there you have it again, Jim Curtin mentioning the flexibility that this team has now, the tactical ability where they can switch to different formations, play three in the back, where, okay, there will be times that we see Damion Lowe, Jack Elliott, and Jacob Glesnes. Jim Curtin also was telling myself and Billy at the convention that if they really needed to, this was before they signed Damion Lowe, they could play Kai Wagner as a left center back. I think we saw that against Pachuca. Is that who we played in the friendly? I don't know. I wasn't at that game. I'm pretty sure we played Pachuca. But whatever team we played in that friendly, Kai Wagner had to fill in as a left center back. And it makes sense because he's left-footed. Yeah, he's not the tallest player in the world, which you want your center backs to be tall. But Jim Curtin said, if we need him to play there, he can play there. And then we would play Matt Real as one of those wing backs. Yeah, that could potentially work too. I don't think the Union will play Kai as a center back unless there's a significant injury. And now you add Damion Lowe, so I'd be shocked if Kai Wagner plays as a left center back in a back three formation. But Damion Lowe is a player who I told some people I wasn't extremely high on when I watched Miami last season. He was the best defender on a terrible Miami defense last season, which isn't really saying much, but I looked up his numbers, and what I saw was exactly why the Union wanted Damion in the first place. Jim Curtin even said in that clip that the characteristics that we want in our center backs, he checks all those boxes. He can play those diagonal balls. He's in the 90th percentile or higher in interceptions, blocks, tackles in the defensive third, tackles one. He can play that key pass to unlock a defense. He's fast, which we haven't had a fast center back since Stuart Finley. And like Jim and Ernst have both said, you put him next to Jacob Glesnes, Jack Elliott, he's going to be better than he was last season in Miami. And so, yeah, he was the best center back last season in Miami, but that's not saying much when Miami was not great defensively. But you add him next to Jack Elliott, Jacob Glesnes. He's going to be a lot comfortable playing with two of the best center backs in the league. And let's not forget, he has Jose Martinez protecting him. And when you have a defensive midfielder like Jose Martinez, who is one of the best, maybe the best, number 6 in MLS, that goes a long way too, helping your back line, helping your goalkeeper. And, he has Andre Blake, who's arguably the best goalkeeper in MLS, his national teammate. He has chemistry playing with Andre Blake. And who's to say, okay, the more they play together at the club level, who's to say that doesn't help Jamaica potentially qualify for one of these international competitions? Because, you always want to start with the spine of your team, in my opinion. That's the most important area when you're building a team is the spine. Your goalkeeper, your center backs, and your number 6. If you get the spine right, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And so to see the Union go out there, get a third center back who we're not expecting Damion Lowe to be a starter. He's a backup, and he will play with all the competitions we have. But I think with such little pressure on him, where he was supposed to be the guy last season in Miami, I think he's going to thrive in this formation, in this system with the Union. the Union, they paid $225,000 in 2023 GAM and a 2024 natural first round draft pick. Ooh, big deal. And as part of the agreement, Inter Miami will also receive homegrown priority over Xander Borgelin, with Philadelphia Union retaining a percentage of any transfer over Xander. And he was a guy who played with Bethlehem Steel. He was in the Union's academy, I believe, for one season, maybe two. And then the Union let him go. He signed with Inter Miami's second team, scored 14 goals last season. So impressed with Inter Miami's second team. I'd be shocked if he plays much with Miami this season, with them now getting Josef Martinez, and they signed Leo Campana to a long-term deal. So I'd be shocked if Xander plays a lot this season, but we shall see. But regardless, the Union get a top center back that they value with the metrics for basically nothing. And then the final trade that the Union made, and I think this is the one that I'm most excited about, and that is Joaquin Torres. Torres spent the last two seasons with Montreal, where he appeared in 55 matches, totaling 3,201 minutes, scoring 7 goals while assisting 12. And, those numbers don't scream superstar at all. And that's fine. The Union aren't asking him to come in here and be the guy. They're asking him to, do something that this team doesn't have, and that's take players on 1v1. The Union, they paid $500,000 in GAM with an additional $300,000 potentially sent to Miami if certain conditions are met. Torres, he signed a 2-year deal with Montreal at the end of the 2021 season, which extends his contract through 2023 with an option year in 2024 and 2025. And when Jim Curtin was asked to speak about Damion Lowe and Joaquin Torres, he was smiling all last week in his press conference. He was so excited. And this is what Jim Curtin had to say about getting Joaquin.
With Joaquin Torres, you have another player that I'll just say I liked since the first time I saw him play. He had his first day of training today with the team. And every player to a man, the first reaction is wow. Incredible technical ability, a guy that wants the ball in tight spaces. Oftentimes as coaches and as fans or as media members, we look at players and we see certain things and our brain goes a certain way. So if you want to compare him to a former Roger Torres of the Philadelphia Union or a Luciano Acosta, it's in that mold of player where when he touches the ball, you get excited. He wants to make plays. I think he's in a new environment. I think he can thrive here. And he's a good kid right off the bat. When you speak with him, very polite, respectful, and a kid that I think is hungry to come here and help us win trophies, the same as Damion.
And then right after that, then Jim Curtin said that they haven't had a player like Joaquin since Elsinho left the club, a player that's comfortable taking players on 1v1, a player that's comfortable dribbling the ball. And I know he compared him to Roger Torres, who I think that is a fair comparison, which maybe some of the newer Union fans don't remember Roger Torres. Talk to any OG Union fans, look up his highlights on YouTube. Man, I wish Roger Torres could have stayed with Union longer and experienced being on good Union teams. Because if that's the case, I think Roger Torres could have been a lifer here in MLS with the Philadelphia Union. He was so talented on such terrible Union teams. And it's a shame that the Union kind of wasted his talent with how terrible they were back in the day. And then Jim Curtin compared him to Acosta. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with Jim there. I think Jim's being way too nice to Joaquin, saying that he reminds him of Luciano Acosta. I think you're reaching there, Jim. But regardless, I mean, this is a player that loves to hug the touchline, loves to cut in on his left foot. He's not afraid to shoot from distance. He has really good soccer awareness, where a couple of his goals last season, he arrived late in the box and his teammates knew where to find him, and he had easy goals. And Jim Curtin always talks about wanting to sign players that have high soccer IQs. And this is another one of those players who has a really good soccer IQ. This is a nifty player that knows where to find the space. Where if you have those players that are thinking 2, 3 players ahead, oh, you've got yourself a really, really good player. And yeah, maybe some people are like, well, why would Montreal want to let him go then? And I do hear you, especially with Montreal letting go of Mihailovic, or selling Mihailovic, I should say. You would think that Joaquin Torres would be the next guy in line to take over for Georgie. But, it's a new coach, Hernan Losada, who was formerly with DC United. So he's going to want to do things differently. He's going to want to do things his way. And he's going to want to bring in his guys. And so if he felt that Joaquin Torres wouldn't have been good in his system, then he was okay with letting him go. We saw Montreal sell a lot of their key players, Mihailovic, Alistair Johnston. We saw Coney get sold to Watford. So they've not been afraid to let go of key players when they've got good offers. And the Union gave him a really good offer, and they accepted the bid. So I'm super excited to see Joaquin Torres here. And if you look at his per 90-minute stats last season, he ranked in the 74th percentile in shots on target with 40%, which would have been tied for fourth on the Union last season. Again, you want players that aren't taking wasteful shots. And Joaquin Torres, 40% of his shots were on target. And that's excellent. We'll take that. And dribbles complete per 90 minutes, 2.6 per 90 minutes, which would put him in the 89th percentile. Nobody else on the Union comes close to that. And so to have Joaquin come off the bench to occasionally start, I think that's going to be fantastic for this whole team. And it's going to have a lot of players be in 1v1 situations, because we saw in 2019, 2020, when El Senior came on, that he would draw 2-3 defenders on him. And then that would leave guys wide open. That would leave the strikers 1v1 against center backs. And yeah, it was a lot of fun when El Senior came on the field, wasn't it, guys? And then I want to talk about the Matt Freese trade to New York City FC. Philadelphia Union, they have agreed to trade homegrown goalkeeper Matt Freese to New York City for $350,000 in GAM. In addition, the Union will receive $200,000 in 2023 GAM and $150,000 in 2024 GAM, with any potential future transfer fee going to the Union. And the Union can also add an additional $400,000 if certain performance conditions are met. In his 4 seasons with the Union, Matt Freese played 13 times, keeping 2 clean sheets with a 79.5 save percentage and a .95 goals against per 90. So not terrible stats when Matt Freese played. But let's face it, we all know that Matt Freese wasn't going to play with the Union. And the Union get a good deal from New York City after Sean Johnson decided to sign with Toronto. So New York City needed a goalkeeper. And they felt comfortable that Matt Freese could be that guy. And I remember having a conversation earlier in the season with Phil Wetton where I said to Phil, I was a little bit surprised that you guys didn't loan Matt Freese to Cincinnati. And this was before Cincinnati had Roman Celentano really blossom into a really good goalkeeper. And I thought Matt Freese would be perfect in Cincinnati. They play a similar style with Union. They value a goalkeeper that's a good shot stopper, which is exactly what Matt Freese is. Where New York City, they value a goalkeeper that's comfortable playing with their feet, where they're comfortable in possession. And so I think Matt Freese will have to adjust a little to how the way the Union were playing, teaching him, to now how the way that New York City wanted him to play. But I think he'll be a good goalkeeper for New York City, but he was never going to get in front of Andre Blake. And if you guys remember my interview with Phil Wetton at the convention, I asked him about Andrew Rick, and he said that Andrew Rick needs to be a priority with his team. This is a very, very high prospect in the Union's academy. We saw him make his debut last season in MLS Next Pro against Orlando City's B team. He only played 13 minutes. And Phil went on to say, He's a potential goalkeeper, whereas last year he wasn't necessarily competing for minutes. This season, he is competing for minutes with Union 2. So in our world, if you're outperforming someone, you deserve to play. So Andrew is now in a situation where if he's proving that you should play, then we need to play him. Now, that may change if we need to give one of our first team guys the minutes in Union 2. But as far as we're concerned, we see him as a high prospect. And with Andrew Rick coming up the ladder, it does make Matt Freese a little bit more dispendable. And again, they get a good deal, and I'm fine with it. Wish Matt Freese all the best in New York City. I think he's going to surprise people and show people that he is a really good goalkeeper. Because I know there were some Union fans out there that don't believe in Matt Freese, don't think he's an MLS goalkeeper, but trust me, he's going to impress in New York City. I have no doubt about that. Now, if we look at the Union's roster, it currently sits at 26 players. And yeah, I know some fans are a little upset about the striker depth, but I'm not as concerned as some fans. You could play Daniel Gonzaga up top if you need to. Quinn Sullivan can play up there. Joaquin Torres can fill up there if need be. And I think this season, we will get the same productivity out of Chris Donovan as we did from Corey Burke last season, which I know that may be a hot take, but I firmly believe that because you add a completely different player than this team has in Joaquin Torres, he's going to draw those double teams like Il Senior did, which is going to leave the strikers in a lot of favorable positions. And Chris got to see what MLS was all about last season. Remember, Ernst Tanner kept talking about the development of Chris, how he impressed them so much last season that it earned him that contract with the Union, that promotion from Union 2. And the Union are going to continue to cross those balls into the box like they always do. And Chris Donovan's a really good player in the air. And so if he works hard, and I truly believe he will work hard, the goals will come for him, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and talk about the last topic I want to talk about. That is MLS announcing their English broadcast teams for the MLS Season Pass. And I know Apple TV just came out with the MLS Season Pass. I have not checked that out yet. So seeing a lot of great things that people have said on social media. So really looking forward to diving into the Apple TV MLS Season Pass. But the English play-by-play announcers announced by MLS were Max Bretos, the former LAFC play-by-play, Steve Cangelosi, the former New York Red Bulls play-by-play, Jake Zivin, the former Portland Timbers play-by-play, Dre Cordero, former Inter Miami play-by-play. You have Keith Costigan, the former Seattle Sounders play-by-play, Mark Followill, former FC Dallas play-by-play, Adrian Healy, former Austin play-by-play, Eric Krakauer, former Charlotte play-by-play, Mark Rogandino, spent the last 5 seasons as the pre-half and post-game host for LAFC, Tyler Terrence, friend of the show, former Chicago Fire play-by-play, Kellen Wilson, former Minnesota play-by-play, and Kevin Egan, the former Atlanta play-by-play. And so when MLS announced how many people were going to be a part of the broadcast teams, they said that there was going to be 14 play-by-play voices and 14 analysts. And so they have to add, I believe, one more play-by-play, if my math is right. Maybe 2. I don't know. I didn't write down how many names that was. You guys can do the math listening. But yeah, I know they're short a couple analysts and play-by-play. So we'll see a couple people get added here in the next couple weeks. And then for the English analyst, you have Kendra D. St. Aubin, former Minnesota United analyst, Marwa Dew, former Atlanta United analyst, Lloyd Lindsay, who was the analyst for ESPN. She was also an analyst with CBS Sports in the NWSL, and she's also worked as a sideline reporter for Nashville Soccer Club. You have Danielle Slayton, former San Jose analyst, Brian Dunseth, love Dunny, former Real Salt Lake analyst, Danny Higginbottom, former Union analyst, Kobe Jones, who was fantastic in the World Cup, if you guys listened to him during the World Cup, great analyst with JP, He was the former LA Galaxy analyst. Devin Kerr, the lead USL analyst, the MLS poached away, but I believe Devin said he's still going to do USL games, but great to see MLS hiring Devin. You guys, if you have not watched USL, you guys are going to love Devin's commentary. And then you have Heath Pierce. He's worked as a soccer analyst for CBS, for Paramount Plus, ESPN, Fox, BN Sports. He's on the podcast with Jimmy Conrad and Charlie Davies, United States of Soccer, I think the podcast is called. Really great podcast, by the way. And then you have Lloyd Sam, former Charlotte FC analyst, Ross Smith, the former Portland Timbers analyst, and Jamie Watson, who was the former Nashville SC analyst. And finally, Taylor Twellman, poached him from ESPN. And so it's a great list of names. And if you guys remember, when I went over my predictions a long time ago, I got 11 out of 28 names right so far. And I did have Kevin Egan and Mo Adu and Brian Dunseth on my bubble, who I think could be potential options. I believe when I did that list, I said that there would be 12 analysts and 12 play-by-plays, but then Apple came out and said, yeah, we're going to have 14. So I guess if we're really going with 14, then add those three names, Kevin, Mo, and Brian, and I'm 14 for 28, so I hit on half the names. Not too bad. A little bit disappointed, though, that Jordan Angeli has not been named in this list by MLS and Apple. I think MLS has really messed up. But the good thing is Jordan's going to be working with the Colorado Rapids, working on content with them. She'll be on the radio every now and then with Colorado. She'll be back home in Denver. So super happy that Jordan's still going to be involved with MLS. She's still going to be involved with the NWSL. And look, I'm happy with these names, and that MLS included. I know The Athletic put out an article saying, expect Tony Meola, the analyst from Chicago Fire, to be included in this list. And so I think, to their credit, to MLS's credit, they absolutely crushed these hires. I mean, they brought in the absolute best names you could possibly have in MLS. And they even went outside the MLS bubble and hired other people as well. And so I am shocked, I'm not going to lie, to see MLS hire so many great commentators. So many of these people on this list have appeared on this podcast. You guys have heard from them. And it does make me proud that people that I've had the chance to speak with on this podcast are getting picked up by MLS and Apple. So really looking forward to the commentary by all these announcers. And remember, MLS did leave it as an option for teams to listen to their home broadcast teams on the radio. All you have to do is go into the app and select home radio broadcast, I think, and then it will sync the radio broadcast with what you're watching on TV. But I'm really looking forward to looking at this Apple TV app and seeing all this great content that you guys are talking about on social media. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, check out Free Kick Pod, wherever you get the podcast, The Free Kick, and check out the website, thefreekick.net. I've had a couple articles posted up there. Friend of the show, Kyle Almany, has decided, yeah, look, I want to write some articles for you. So I think he said, yeah, I'll give you 1 or 2 articles a month. And so I have a piece coming out on the website where Kyle breaks down some numbers from Mikel Ua and why Kyle believes that he's going to have a big 2023 season. So check out for that article on the website. So proud to have Kyle, a part of the Free Kick, helping me write articles. And if you guys want to get involved, don't be afraid to hit me up on social media. Most active on Twitter, but I believe if you go to the website, thefreekick.net, you can hit the contact form and it'll email me. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.